In this video, I will teach you the loop method. This is a technique that I teach extremely busy professionals. And the reason I teach this technique is because a lot of study techniques that are usually given assume that people have a magical 1 hour at the end of their day to spend time studying for, or they've got a lot of time on the weekend. You know, a lot of conventional study advice is geared towards students who have lots of free time. But this technique, even if you have 10 minutes a day, you'll still be able to use it and get some beneficial learning. And I'll show you how, exactly step by step. I'm going to have a timer out. I've already got an article out of how I'm going to use this loop method and go through these 3 steps. Pre-study, which is to open up the loop. Inquiry-based learning, which is to keep the loop going. And micro-learning. This is how you actually fit it into those 5-minute slots that you have in your day. So I'm being serious. If there's a 5-minute slot that you have between picking up the kids from school and them getting in the car, you can actually use that to chip away at getting learning done. If you've got 10 minutes before your next meeting, or if you're on the train, you can use this technique. And I've used this technique multiple times. I carry a handy dandy textbook, notebook with me to use this loop method. And I want to show you exactly how to do it. So first, we're going to do pre-study, and we're going to keep it as short as 10 minutes. This is going to open the loop of what we're trying to study. And again, 10 minutes is not going to be enough time to get some meaningful depth, but it's going to ignite us to be able to do the next step, which is the inquiry-based learning. This is where we open the loop and we actually create questions at the end of the 10 minutes. So by creating these questions, we've now begun a loop and we haven't answered them just yet, right? So if I'm going to be studying something about knowledge graphs, I'll demonstrate this. By the end of the 10-minute pre-study, I'm still going to have lots of questions on my mind. I want to capture those questions. And what I've done is I've opened a loop of curiosity. Now my brain is really itching to answer these questions, but I'm not going to give myself the opportunity to answer those questions because I'm a busy professional and I need to go somewhere. I just don't have time to study. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a micro-learning. So I'm going to identify my schedule. I'm going to identify pockets of time in which I have a little bit of time to study and learn and pick up this article again. And the beauty is because we've opened some questions here. We've started with some questions here. We've opened some loops. Our brain actually subconsciously tries thinking about the answer to these questions, and it makes it a really easy way to learn a lot using those small pockets of time. So I'm going to demonstrate exactly how to do this, starting with this article here, the Enhancing LLMs with Knowledge Graphs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trusty handy dandy timer. Here we go. And I'm going to do a 10-minute timer. There we go. And I'm just going to quickly explain what we're doing. We've got the canvas out here, and in this pre-study technique, we're quickly mapping out what I think the main ideas could be of this article in 10 minutes. And the reason I'm doing this using a mind map is because a mind map is valuable for relating information, seeing what the flow is, organizing my thoughts. It's a lot easier than typing out the information. So I highly encourage you to have your own notebook where you try connecting. You want to use many nodes, you want to use more edges, you want to use arrows and links together. That's the actual technique you want to use. So let me start that timer for 10 minutes and let me narrate exactly what I'm doing. Here we go. So this is the article that I'm going to do my pre-study on. You might be doing it on a research paper, a YouTube video, whatever it is. You can use the exact same technique here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just focus on trying to map out what I believe the main ideas could be of this concept and of what I'm about to study. So we've got LLMs with knowledge graphs. So I already see, I predict that the main thing that's going to be talked about is LLMs and knowledge graphs. And I want to learn this because I need to learn more about knowledge graphs because I've studied it, but let's just pretend I don't have a lot of an idea of what this is and I want to upskill. And I've only got 10 minutes, 9 minutes and 20 seconds remaining. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read and I'm going to skim. And the goal is not for me to read the whole thing from front to end because you're not going to be able to do that in 10 minutes, especially if you're reading more dense content. But I'm going to quickly go through it and skim. So LLMs, useful, LLMs struggle with information, yep, hallucination. Okay, so that's what a knowledge graph helps to solve. Cool. So one of the problems with an LLM is that it's got hallucinations. There we go. And a knowledge graph solves that. And that's great because I'm building an LLM and it hallucinates a lot. So I'm assuming that knowledge graphs is a solution to do that. Here we go. You'll explain the first principles and LLMs, and we'll cover practical examples. I love that. Okay, so what even is a knowledge graph? Graph, represent, nodes. Oh, it's kind of like a mind map. So I might even do that a little bit. So a knowledge graph it consists of nodes to represent entities and edges to represent relationships. Okay, so it's got nodes and it's got edges, which is very different from like a classical knowledge store. So I've been using PDFs a lot. So I'm going to do like PDFs here. I feel like PDFs don't have nodes and edges. They're just like tons of chunks, right? Like that's what happens there. So, okay, let's keep going. The features are, okay, there's semantic relationships, cribble structures. There's probably not, I'm not going to be able to like really learn this in depth. So I'm not going to do this in my pre-study. I feel like this ends up as my questions. Refers to two nodes. Okay, yep. All right, scalability, complexity of underlying data. Okay, so it's scalable. That's really cool. There we go. Knowledge description, RDF. That's not as interesting. You're also under RDF. Yep. Specification of representing. Okay, there's Genai. I already know what Genai is. I don't really need to learn it. But this is something that I'd like to learn a little bit more about. How do they actually get related? Factual accuracy. Yeah, they actually can't. Yeah, they don't do that. Yeah, because they don't know. They're based on text, like training. Most cases, they didn't have the information. Access to contextual and domain specific can formulate meaningful and correct responses. Okay, that's really good. Allow them to access factual information thus. Okay, so one way I see it is that knowledge graphs allows us to set like really hard rules. So that's something that I'm seeing here as well. That's one of the benefits of having a knowledge graph, like just really hard rules. It's like very binary, 0, 1. Whereas obviously an LLM, it's actually not binary because it's trained on text. It doesn't even know, but this makes it very black and white. Which is very useful because otherwise sometimes the LLM just makes stuff up. That's how it hallucinates. Okay, that's really cool. So anything else here? LLMs, recurring interfaces, knowledge graphs. That's awesome. Yep. Non-technical users to interface with KGs. So what I've understood here is that LLMs and KGs have already existed, like knowledge graphs, but they used to be like in a more esoteric query-based format, which is hard to read. And I kind of already know what that looks like, but I might just search up like SQL query just to see what that query-based, yeah, it kind of looks like this output, but with an LLM, it actually becomes like natural language, which is awesome. So that's really cool. Dynamic knowledge integration. How much time do I have? I still have 5 minutes, so not a lot of time. The text generated by LLMs on the training data set, which is often outdated. Okay, that's awesome. This is great. Yeah, like my current solution, I have to like constantly change the text in a PDF like multiple times and download the file. It's just horrendous. Yeah. Update real time. That's really cool. That's very good. Yeah. So example workflow. Yep. Query language. The LLM takes it in, translates into query language, knowledge graph, because it can only access query language and it's raw data, and then LLM reads that and gives it back. So that's very useful. I imagine, yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Use cases. This is good because I need to know how it's used. This is very good, actually. What that's saying is that, because a lot of the way that I've been trying to improve my own AI is like prompting it constantly and changing the prompt. But if I can access the exact training data set, that's a lot better. and sorry, not the training, the actual knowledge graph and make adjustments there. Obviously, I've got like a knowledge graph open here as well that I'm trying to play around with too. So that that helps to learn a little bit more about that here as well. And obviously, if I had more time, I'd play around with it, but I don't because I'm a busy guy. I've only got 3 minutes until I actually need to stop this process. But personalized recommendations, okay, recommendation agent, yep. Scientific research. Okay, so these are the good applications of it. So I'm starting to see a few things here. So obviously, there's something about this being one of the main ideas, like knowledge graphs and LLMs being used together. Because in the past, when LLMs didn't exist, knowledge graphs still existed. I mean, it says something about 2012 here. Since 1980s, actually, never mind. It was popularized in 2012. So first of all is like integration, which is one of those main ideas that it's talking about here. And then one of the other kind of main ideas that it was talking about was like the structure of knowledge graphs. So that's one thing there as well. The benefits of using a knowledge graph, which I'm still like unclear about. That's one of my questions. It's like, what's the benefit? I mean, I can start to see it, but I don't know the explicit benefit. And then there's also the applications of using this knowledge graph structure as well. Applications as like one of the core ideas. And then I feel like the integration is obviously contingent on the graph itself. Wait, no, integration is more theoretical. No, actually, what direction would this be? You would need to understand the structure before you understand integration. I agree. Benefits is more, and applications is more like understanding the structure in itself. I feel like the structure is the core idea. Like I need to know more about that because that's the blocker preventing me from understanding its benefits and applications. So that's something that I might list there. So I feel like one of those core ideas is going to be knowledge graph structure in itself. Like how does it actually work? And then how it actually integrates with AI tools. I've got a minute left. And then benefits here and then applications. Okay, cool. So I feel like that's my main flow. And I know there's a few more things here. Dynamic knowledge integration. Yep, that's I made sense with that. Retrieving information. The output is also in code form. LLMs bridge this gap. Yep, I already know that. Oh, I already read this part. Cool. Yes, these are some things that you can apply. Yes, that's right. So Neo4j is the only one that I've already used so far. These are some tools that you can use here. Libraries for integration. This is how like you'd actually integrate it with. And I'm already using LangChain for this one, so that's fine. This one here, I won't have to worry about too much. Okay, I'll just go to the bottom. There we go, conclusion. This is a good place. I should probably gone here. We discussed, yep, and how they complement. Using LangChain, after understanding, you could implement these tools. Okay, cool, nice, sweet. All right, so we've got 20 seconds left, but what I understood is that one of the main ideas, core ideas here is KG, knowledge graph structure, and obviously that leads into the benefit of having like an LLM-X knowledge graph integration. And there was like a few case studies of the benefits and applications of it. So I might have like, benefit applications. I feel like this is like just case study of learning more about how this integrates. So that's one of those core ideas. Time is up, but I'm really quickly just going to like flesh out this part that I just quickly understood. So I know it's like nodes and edges and then entities, right? That's like something that I learned. So it's kind of like a mind map. Very different from like a linear kind of thing. So that's one thing that I'm seeing there. There's like a comparison between PDFs and vector stores done. And then for the knowledge graphs and LLMs, there's like an ability for the query language and natural language to like link together, which is awesome. Because then we can put knowledge graphs in front of real users because we don't have to worry about them knowing what a query looks like. That's great for users and great for me because I don't want to deal with too much code, right? So for developers as well. Cool. And then finally, there's some benefits there. There was like real-time kind of application, real-time. And then I know I'm going over time, but I just need to quickly do this one. Real-time application. There was also the ability to like just semantically organize information a bit more. There was something that I wrote here, like you can make it more rule, binary-like. Okay, cool. So that's something that I'm seeing that like I can do. These are the benefits from the actual process. Now, sweet. So we've done the pre-study process. You can see it took me probably like 12 minutes to do, but again, realistically, you can get this done in 10 minutes, and you want to do it through this mind map format that I've done here. Now, what we want to do is we want to move on to this next step. Now, just to pretend, now the 10 minutes is done, we're about to like leave. We're about to go to work. We've got our next meeting starting. We've got to cook. We've got to take care of the kids. We're about to go to the gym, whatever it is, right? We're about to go to sleep because again, we're busy, so we don't have that much time. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open the loop before we leave. So this is important. Before we exit this pre-study that we've just done, we now want to ask certain questions and we want to collect them. And I've got tons of questions. So one of my first questions is, dude, like, what's like the difference between a knowledge graph? Well, what's an example of a knowledge graph being used really well? So an example of a knowledge graph, because I don't really know that. I just want to see one, if that makes sense. I just want to see like one being used, because it talked about a lot of theory here, but it didn't really show me one that I could like predictably use, and I didn't have enough time to take a look into that. So that's honestly one of my pressing questions, but I'm just going to quickly collect more. What's another question? Like, how does it, like, what are some specific features of it? Features of a knowledge graph? Like, you know, that's something I'm thinking about here as well. How do I even do one? That's one question here. Like, how do I practically do it? I know there's some examples there as well. What are some examples of a KGX LLM? Like, that's another question I'm thinking about. Also, you don't need to make these connections. I'm just like creating these questions here. And what I'm gonna do now, benefit. I mean, I kind of understood the benefits a little bit, but I feel like these are my major questions. I just want to see like an example of it being used, like an LLM and knowledge graph being used versus an LLM and knowledge graph not being used. I'd love to see an example like that, just so I can see black and white what the differences are. Because, you know, this is all cool and all, but I still need to see something. And then there's another thing here as well. It's like the specific way that a knowledge graph would be used. So this goes into the tech. Like, I'd have to see how Neo4j, like how they use a knowledge graph and what that looks like, because I don't really know what that looks like. And how to use it, that's like the specific, I feel like that kind of relates together. So these are my two core questions that I have. And now this is the key. I actually want to keep this loop open. I'm not going to answer this question because this goes into our final part, which is the microlearning. Now imagine I'm about to leave and I've got this mind map on my notebook and I've got some questions listed here. If I'm doing it on my iPad, of course I've got my iPad out as well. Now what we're doing is we're doing an audit of our schedule. So what you want to do is you want to identify like what parts of the day are you really busy, which is going to be most of the day, but you also want to identify opportunities to micro-learn. So micro-learning refers to having a schedule of time where you use pockets of time throughout your day in order to get some learning done. So a lot of us, we'll always have pockets of time. I've coached very, very busy professionals. I've coached really, really busy people that can only like learn on a flight type of busy, and they still get time. So if this is like a really quick rule of thumb, it's really easy to use, and I know it's a bit brutal. If you're saying you're too busy, you're not too busy. Like, you're actually just not too busy, because I've met really, really busy people. So if I have a university student saying I'm too busy, I just tell them, you're really not. Like, there will be time in the day where you've got access to your phone and you're probably scrolling on Instagram. And yes, even if you're in the toilet, even if you're waiting in the line for food, before you're going to the bus, even during, like, if you use public transport as well, like, going to the bus. I've coached a few professionals who have made more time for micro-learning. Instead of driving to work, which would take them 30 minutes, they bus it. And yes, it might take an hour, but that's an hour of time where they can just sit down in the corner of the bus. They can call people. They can quickly do this micro-learning themselves. And that actually has led to meaningful change. So there are some lifestyle changes that might need to occur here. But essentially, what you want to do is you want to map out your existing schedule, and a really good, easy free tool that you can use is Google Calendar, and identify when you're working, and even during work, identify blocks of time that you have. You really need to be sensitive here. Even a minute or even 2 minutes, just really, really quickly, can actually make a very big difference. I'm being serious. Like, you want to be that sensitive to this micro-learning, and you really want to identify these pockets of time where you have access to your phone, you've got access to your notebook, and you've got that open loop. You've got this question that you want to ask. And the reason this is so powerful is because this question you'll subconsciously be thinking about it. And so it works with microlearning because you don't have to open the whole loop up again. Most people, when they start to sit down and study, they open the loop and by the end they close it. And at the end of the study session, they're done. They're not really thinking about things. But now that I've got these questions are going to be at the top of my mind. And I want to remind myself of these questions. So practically, what's going to happen is I've got this one question. This question I prioritize. Example of a knowledge graph being used with an LLM versus it not being used. That's a question that's going to be on top of my mind. And so if I'm on the bus or if I'm on the tram, if I'm on the train and there's going to be a time today where I'm going to be there for 10 minutes, instead of scrolling Google or YouTube or Instagram, I'm going to go into my search engine. I'm going to use Claude, ChatGPT, some AI. I'm going to have my notebook out as well really quickly. And I'm going to quickly just try answering that question. What's an example of a knowledge graph being used? And I might go into AI and I might use a dictation feature like, hey, could you give me an example of a knowledge graph being used? And I'm going to think about it. And then in that 10-minute period, there is going to be some knowledge that I will gain. And I'll quickly just write that down on my mind map. I'll just quickly go like, oh, cool. Like this is an example of a knowledge graph being used. So I might go here and I might be like, okay, yes, so this is how the knowledge graph was used. This is an example of it. And this is what I learned from this example. So, they were mapping out, for example, they were mapping out like a medication and they were mapping out certain diseases associated, well, let's say certain symptoms associated with it. And they mapped out a lot of symptoms here. And essentially what happened was the LLM that used this knowledge graph, it never hallucinated. They did like 1,000 test cases. It never made up symptoms. It never hallucinated because it was so black and white. But then an LLM that didn't use that sometimes made up symptoms that weren't actually classified by like an FDA or like a medical board or like a research paper that you're reading, for example, right? And so it started hallucinating a lot. So that might be the example that I read, and that does not take 10 minutes to read. Like that takes like 5 minutes to read for me really quickly if I'm on AI, for example. Or if I go through this page again, I might have some time, like 10 minutes. I really just want to spend some more time going through this code and reading this code, for example. So that might be an example of me doing that micro-learning. And then by the end of the 10 minutes, again, I'm not going to have the opportunity to answer this question fully. And that's the point. There's always going to be this open loop. There's always going to be this open loop of time where I've just got this question in the back of my mind and I've got this map where I can quickly offload it and quickly just represent it. And seriously, by the end of the day, you'll start to see that this mind map actually populates and it adds up. Those 5-minute blocks of time, that micro-learning that you can do throughout the day adds up. And sometimes you don't need the map. You can just read. You can just read the article. You've got the question at the top of your mind. You've got this open loop and your brain is just itching to answer that question. And so subconsciously, even when you're not learning, even whilst you're working, this has happened to me multiple times, I'm doing this and then I'll enter like a consultation and I'll do it with a student or I'll do it with a professional and we'll talk about their problems. And it'll be something about obviously their system and their learning process. And at the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, how do I apply that? Obviously, it's just itching at the back of my mind as I am like doing this consult. Obviously, I get into flow, but then by the end of the consult, I've probably got 10 minutes before I need to eat lunch or the next meeting. I am like itching to answer that question. Like I'm thinking about it. And that way, I'm able to get quite a lot of learning done throughout the day for this topic, and I haven't spent a lot of time on it. And guess what? I wouldn't be able to spend a lot of time on it anyway. It's not like I have an hour at the end of the day or you have an hour at the end of the day to learn because, again, you've got a busy schedule. And so this allows us to optimize the way that we use these pockets of time and the way that we're really, really busy to actually get meaningful learning done and slowly add up the reps that we put throughout the day. By the end of the day, you've got like you've got a pretty good learning going on. Like you've got a good understanding of it. Like I feel like if I did this throughout the day, like I actually have to go in like 2 minutes. I feel like by the end of the day, and then I've got like a meeting for an hour and then we've got prayer and then I've got like, we've got to go to the gym. But there's going to be periods of time throughout that where I'm going to be thinking about knowledge graphs and I'm going to be going onto Claude or Google and reading this. So this is the process at a very high level. Now, the reason, this is like a side note before we conclude, I feel like this has really actually reduced my phone time usage on things that I'd usually procrastinate on. So obviously the way that you want to reduce your procrastination is by getting app blockers and making sure that you've got like, phone passwords long, or you make it boring, you make it hard to access your phone. But yes, you want to do that. And if you can add an incentive to do something else during these small pockets of time that you have, you actually retrain your brain to not want to open up Instagram. Like, you're actually developing a really good habit of just doing tiny micro learning throughout the day. And so, sometimes I've had experiences with my friends where on the train going back home, they're kind of just on Instagram. Say at the end of the day, their brains are fried, everyone's tired. And I'm kind of just speaking to ChatGPT. And I remember one of my friends being like, dude, who are you in a call with? And I'm like, no, dude, I'm speaking to ChatGPT. We're talking about learning science. We're talking about AI and everything. And they're like, what are you doing? So this is like a demonstration that I've done there. That is the end of it. Again, there's a lot of nuance. Like, for example, how do you actually think during this map? What am I specifically thinking about? How do we change it up? How do we reevaluate it? But again, that does take more time to learn about. So this is a really good introductory process and system that you can use as a busy professional with tiny slots in your day. And if you can use this, you won't need an additional hour at the end of the day. You don't have to sacrifice those priorities because you're already making use of underutilized pockets of time in your day, and you're slowly chipping away at getting valuable learning done.